Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. Today I want to talk about these opinion polls showing a real pro-lockdown sentiment in the country. And you always have to treat opinion polls with a grain of salt and with healthy skepticism. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to just take them as read as being 100% accurate. I won't go into too much depth specifically about the polls, but I'll provide some information in the description about, what they are. And they essentially say that, a lot of British people are in favour of the lockdown, kind of 75 to 80% of people, and the lockdown is a sort of a great thing, and we don't want the government to lift the lockdown. And I want to provide some interpretation into these results, assuming they're correct, and try to provide some context as to why people might think this. So, everyone knows I'm totally against the lockdown. Just because a lockdown's popular does not make it lawful. I think the lockdown's unlawful because it violates a citizen's freedom of movement, and it's also detention without trial, which is unlawful. So that's my position. Regarding the people's positive outlook on the lockdown, though, I think it's primarily dominated by fear. So there's a few different points I can make on this. Firstly, obviously, is fear of the virus. People think the lockdown is protecting them from the virus. And, I've never really understood why people think that, if they're self-isolating, other people not self-isolating is going to harm them. I mean, if you're self-isolating in your home, how can you catch a virus from someone who's, going about their daily life? So I think a lot of the lockdown hype and propaganda is irrational. I mean, it's just not based on logic. Also, if you look at these other countries like Sweden, like Belarus, like 7 US states that did not lock down, all of them have fared no worse than Britain. And, some of them have fared significantly better than Britain. So I do think there's evidence that the lockdown does not actually save lives, even though there's been a ton of propaganda that the correlation between lockdown and lives saved is significant. I think there's also a feeling among a lot of people in the country that the propaganda of lockdown is popular, or lockdown's the right thing. People want to support that. They want to be patriotic. They don't want to kind of go against the crowd. They want to say, well, if everyone's saying lockdown's a great thing, or lockdown is the right thing, then, why am I going to argue with that? I mean, it must be the right thing. If the government's saying it, if media's saying it, if celebrities are saying it, I don't want to go against the tide. It must be the right thing. So I think that's part of it. I think, we've really lost in this country this concept of dissent. Dissent is, used to be something that held the government accountable. Now there's a real fear in people about going against the authoritative entity, going against the government, going against what's politically correct. And the only dissent that is popular now is against dissenters. If you're a dissenter like me, who says, well, maybe we should double check what we're doing here before we break the law, I'm the bad guy. Whereas if you're, just a regular person, you toe the party line, you say, yeah, whatever the government says, I totally agree with, then that's kind of like the right thing to do. So obviously people have a fear of getting sick once they go out of the house, and they think that by continuing the lockdown, they're less likely to get sick. But of course, again, no one's forcing you to leave your house. I'm pretty sure when this lockdown ends, there's going to be a lot of talk by the government and in the media about, there's a lot of people scared about leaving their home, and someone very senior in government, maybe even the Prime Minister, is going to come out and say, no one is going to force you to leave your home if you don't wish to. But of course, for people who did wish to go out during the lockdown, the government forced them into their homes. So we become a country where, we definitely tolerate the government forcing us into our homes against our will. But when it comes to the government forcing us out of our home against our will, that's where we draw the line. So, I'm against government force violating people's civil liberties, no matter what it is. But I think we're going to become a country that's selective government force is fine. as long as it's politically correct. So I think they're my points on fear. Like I say, why you need the government to tell you to do something you can already do is beyond me. But none of this lockdown perception is particularly rational. Obviously, I totally respect people's rights to their own opinion. But if you want to stay locked down in your home, you don't need anyone's permission. You can do it right now. Second point I want to make really is the reason people are pro-lockdown is the misallocation of economic resources by Rishi, and I've done a couple of videos talking about this, particularly this furlough stuff. If you're a furloughed worker, when you were at work, you were earning 100% of your salary for doing 100% of the work. Now you're earning 80% of your salary for doing zero work. So it's technically a pay rise. You don't have to get up at 5 in the morning. You don't have to ride the train to work. You don't have to buy after work drinks. You don't have to buy, new shirts and new clothes to wear at work. You don't have to put petrol in your car. You can get rid of all the stress of work or the politics of work. And you can chill out at your home. Maybe you've got a nice home. You can hang out with your kids. For those people, going back to work is kind of like a net loss for them. So I can see why they'd be in favour of the lockdown continuing. I think a lot of people are having financial hardship in the country, and the furloughed people and the bailed out people, all of us really, are going to have this financial pain of the lockdown deferred. If we had the pain now with no bailouts, no furlough, people were saying, well, I got to get back to work because I got to feed myself and my family. When you're getting money not to work, the pain of that is going to come later. It's going to come through inflation. People say, hey, I can go to the pub and buy a pint of beer for £3. But when you get to this time next year and you're buying a pint of beer for £12 or £15, your standard of living or your enjoyment of living is going to decline. And those people then, I think, will become much more anti-lockdown in retrospect. Whereas if that financial pain was now, they'd be against it now. So it's kind of a political sleight of hand by the government. They dull the pain of lockdown by printing money and giving it to you. People aren't really foreseeing or forecasting that they're going to have to tolerate that financial pain later. That's going to come as like, wow, we never expected this. But of course, it's obvious. You can't have, if that pound in your pocket has got a pound's worth of purchasing power, it has to be backed up by a pound's worth of labour. And if people are sitting at the home not doing any labour, how can that pound be worth a pound's worth of labour? It's just impossible. Final point I'll make on misallocation of resources is about the unions. A lot of the unions are coming out saying, hey, we need to be supporting the lockdown and reluctant to send our people back to work because they might get sick at work. And I think the government has perpetuated so much propaganda through the media and through their announcements about, this virus is a killer and all this sort of stuff, when, at the beginning of the virus, it was one of these things where most people who get it are just going to have very, very minor symptoms. They might not even notice they've got it. That's probably the vast majority of people who got the virus. There's also been no sort of official comparisons between people who are dying with the virus along with other things, or people who are dying specifically of the virus. In the public's mind, they're thinking, hey, if I catch the virus, I'm dead. Whereas really, if you catch the virus, you're unlikely to die, and the chances of you having relatively mild symptoms are much, much higher. However, these union people are fanning the flames, looking to get better deals for their union members, saying, hey, well, we can't be sending all our unions of people back to work in case they might die, or in case they might become so sick they become incapacitated and all this kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of problems being stored up with the government's messaging. They're trying to flick on a dime. They're trying to say, hey, this lockdown is justified because the virus is so serious. Now they're trying to flip the script and say, hey, look, you can go back to work because this virus is not that serious, and it's just going to lead to a lot of economic stagnation going forward. So that's kind of my summary. I think check out these opinion polls yourself. I think the wording is really, really critical. I mean, if you say, are you supportive of the lockdown, yes or no? If they're supportive of it, they might say yes. But if you say, are you supportive of having your civil liberties snatched from you? You know, it technically means the same thing, but people might say, well, no to that, but yes to the other one. There's also a lot of polls talking about different levels of opening. Would you be in favour of restaurants opening, or would you not be in favour of stadiums opening or concerts opening? And so people want to do the politically correct thing. They say, oh yeah, well, if my corner shop opens, that's okay, but my local football stadium, you know, no way. But of course, why not just open the football stadium and people who want to go can go, people who don't want to go cannot go. The Belarusian Football League has not stopped playing. They have less than 100 deaths in the whole country. And, you know, so whether that's a case study or not is open to debate. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.